The show begins with a king of the Vikings called Lee. Just as he returns from a war with his soldiers, he uses the opportunity to narrate to them how the love of his life, Sig, a half-human and half-giant. Just a year ago, foreign armies came to their land to attack. They were outnumbered by millions of foreign soldiers, but Leif's will to fight was still strong. Just during a moment, he was about to be butchered by a soldier. That was when he first saw the love of his life, Sigurd, who appeared like an angel and saved his life. Sigrid's sword fighting skills were so good that she killed 10 men in seconds. With her help, they vanquished the foreign soldiers and won the war. Immediately after the war, lightning began to spark everywhere, and dozens of Valkyries descended from Valhalla and began to take all the corpses of the men killed to Valhalla, which is like heaven in this universe. Just after King Leif is done telling the story, they finally return back to their land where Sigd shows up to welcome him. Sigd is so beautiful that Leif's men cannot stop staring at her, and she's also very funny as she makes everyone laugh. After a while, King Leif tells Sigd to come with him as he has something to show her. He takes her to a house he's building and reveals to her that immediately after their wedding feast they will raise their children in this place. Sigd joyfully kisses him, and after they both had sex, she requests a favor from him. She wishes for him to come to her land Genim, a place where her kind, the giant, stays. She wants to introduce him to her family. Before Sigd could finish talking, King Leif states that the first thing tomorrow morning they will both ride to her land to go see her family. The next morning, King Leif takes the sword his father left for him in a stone and rode with Sigd to her land. When they arrived, they see two giants fighting, which made Leif draw out his sword ready to defend himself. But Sigd runs to him as the both giants turn out to be her brothers and were only training at the gate. Shred meets her father Chgur, who is so happy to see her. But her father's mood changes when he sees her with a human. Shred's father reveals they are giants and children of Satang, and it's an abomination for giants to feast with men, not to talk of getting married to them. King Leif tells King Chgur that humans and giants can become friends from now on and gives them his father's sword as a symbol of peace. For a bride price, King Leif gives Chgur 900,000 silver coins and seeds they can use to grow their crops, which leaves the giants' mouths wide open out of shock. King Chgur talks about how before god Odin pillaged their lands, the giants had honor and prospered. He decided not to care what the gods think anymore and announces to hold a wedding ceremony with his daughter Sigurd and King Leif. Just as Chgur is about to pronounce them husband and wife, two gods called Thor and his flanked brother Balder show up. Thor reveals that he is looking for Loki, but the giants, who see the gods as unwelcome guests, boldly tell the gods to leave. Thor gets angry concerning their disrespect and figures that the best way he can find Loki is by killing every one of them since Loki is a god of deception. The giants fight with everything they have, but they were no match for a god with a thunderstorm. Thor kills everyone, but fortunately King Leif and Sig were able to survive this attack. God Balder clearly sees they are both alive and lies to Thor that there are no survivors, making Thor leave. God Balder is the god of light and radiance, joy and purity, peace and forgiveness. So this tracks upon seeing how Thor massacred her town and family. Sigd swears vengeance on Thor. Sigd suddenly gets dragged by an unknown force to the underworld. She is met by Loki and his daughter Hel. The Valkyrie takes people who die in war to Valhalla, but Hel does the opposite. Her job is to take thieves, liars, traitors, and cowards to the underworld. Loki is willing to assist her in killing Thor, but in order for that to happen she will have to make a deal with a god tribe called the Veyr gods. The Veyr gods are a god tribe who once waged war with Odin and his tribe called the Esir gods. These god tribes hate each other, so Loki wants Sig to make a deal with the Veyr gods to go on another war with Odin. Loki reveals that Thor can be killed just with a god-killing iron made by a dwarf called An. Shred must journey to Vahan, which is where the Veyr gods are, but advises her to gather at least 5 fighters for this mission. Those fighters must have hunger for revenge in their hearts and should never be afraid of death. King Leif tells Sig that Loki is not to be trusted, but Sigrid is willing to do whatever it takes to kill Thor and avenge her tribe. Without wasting much time, she goes to start recruiting warriors for the mission. She recruits her closest friend Hervair, who lost her sons in the battle, and death doesn't scare her as she wishes to one day die in battle so she can join her sons in Valhalla. Second is the promiscuous poet Egil. Egil is a slave of King Leif who doesn't have a will of his own. As he joins the team, C leads the team to meet the Side Kona, a feared prophetess who ate her son raw in exchange for the power of the all-seeing eye. Sidona agrees to join her, and a very dangerous fighter of hers called the Wolf Man also agreed to join. Just one more fighter remains to recruit, and that leads Sig to go see a dwarf Anvur. Anvur is a blacksmith who produces weapons capable of killing gods. After arming themselves with weapons from Anvur's forge, which can only be wielded by warriors of true intent, Anvur decided to also join them on their quest. What Sigrid doesn't know is Odin has been watching her through the eyes of some birds. The scene changes to show us Asgard, where we see Thor training his young son how to fight. His brother Baldur shows up and warns Thor of their father's message. Odin wants Thor not to leave Asgard for a while because a woman seeks revenge against him, and he doesn't know what she's capable of. Loki, who is surveying the situation in his lizard form, has made a pact with Odin's hostage wife Freya, who is sure the Veir gods will accept Sigd if she proves herself. Just as Sigd begins her mission with the warriors, Egil and Anvur explain to us why and how the Veir and Aster gods became enemies thousands of years ago. Veir and Aster gods ruled together, but Odin grew jealous of the Veir's ability to see the future. This resulted in the war and made Odin sacrifice his own eye for the ability to see his future, stealing their cedar magic and the apples that gave the Veir gods eternal life, destroying Vanaheim and taking Freya, a member of their tribe, as his wife. Sigd and her friends spend a week searching for the borders of Vanaheim where they can find the Veir gods, but unfortunately Odin sends his heralds called the Bullers to chase after them. Odin and his heralds stopped at each village and did not only massacre everyone but also took one of their eyes each. If Sigrid and her gang don't find the Vanaheim borders as soon as possible, Odin's heralds will locate them soon enough and they will have to fight. Sigrid goes to a quiet place and calls on Loki to help show her the way to Vanaheim, but she gets no replies and very few feel Sigrid is making a bad decision by working with a trickster like Loki. He is no different than Thor or even the Veir gods whom she seeks to bargain with. He believes the gods are all the same, and instead of them trying to kill one god who killed her tribe, they could try and make the gods kill one another. Odin's heralds find and chase after them, but they barely manage to escape. They stop at a little cabin where they meet a man called Rakel, his wife In, and their son Fro. Rakel gives them shelter and food, but later that night Sigrid and her gang find out that they are harboring a woman they intend to sacrifice to earn Odin's favor. Sigrid and her gang kill Rakel, In, and Fro for their betrayal, and Leif frees the captive woman whom he places on his horse as they are being pursued by Odin's heralds. Back at Valhalla, Thor is furious with Odin who confined him like a child in Asgard to keep him safe from a mere human like Sigrid. He disobeys Odin's orders and goes to Earth to find Sigrid and kill her. Thor unleashes a storm that separates Sigrid from her gang. Thor attacks her, but Sigrid's hunger for revenge made her last long in the fight. To our surprise, that girl Leif saved unleashes a kind of spell that opens the visible gates to Vanaheim, and since no guardian can cross the border without declaring another war, Thor retreats. Thor is up to no good as ever. In the next episode, we see him being seduced by a siren beside a shipwreck while Loki spies on him from nearby. Later on at Asgard, he is subsequently approached by a woman who calls herself Sandra the Dread, and Thor kneels before her in defeat. Meanwhile, Sigrid and her gang meet the Veir gods who live rotten and decayed because they are unworried and neglected. The Veir gods grant Sigrid and her gang an audience with their king called Tuas. Because they rescued their human servant Thyra, and since Tuas doesn't speak English, Thyra serves as his translator to Sigrid and her gang. Leif begs Tuas to join them to fight against Odin and his tribe, but Tuas reveals he's on a truce with Odin and rejects their request as he is not willing to scorch the world to help them. However, Loki in the form of a worm gets in Sigrid's ear and gives her a clue on how to get Tuas to help. Sigrid tells Tuas that she will retrieve the apples of immortality that Odin stole from the orchard of gold where the Veir are forbidden from treading. This apple of immortality can stop the Veir gods from rotting and make them look forever young like Odin and his tribe. Tuas tells them of the risk of retrieving this apple. A snow dragon guards the apple of immortality, and if they can defeat it and retrieve the apple, then the Veir gods will help them. Tuas also adds that Thyra will follow them on the journey as he needs someone to bring back the news if they get killed by the Tuas holds a feast at night for them. Sigrid asks Thyra how she started living with the Veir gods. Thyra narrates that the Veir gods found her in the borderlands as a baby. They raised her and treated her with kindness. Sigd argues with Leif because he is becoming soft due to how he bowed to the Veir king and how one bowed to her father. Leif doesn't want to live up to his reputation as Leif the Merciless and proves a point by freeing a girl as his slave. Elul followed them all because he is a slave, but now he has a will of his own. He decided to go back home. The next morning, Sigrid and her gang find the apple of immortality but are attacked by the snow dragon. The gang displayed awesome teamwork in the fight and killed the dragon. They took the apple of immortality to the Veir gods. Some of them eat it, but it turned out to be poisoned as they began to choke. Tuas believes it to be Sigret and her gang doing and sends his guards after them. The gang is forced to flee, but Leif decides to stay behind to collapse the entrance in a bit of heroic self-sacrifice. He sees worms wriggle from the apples and realizes that it was Loki who poisoned the apples. The next episode begins with a flashback where Loki helps his giant wife in childbearing. After his daughter, whom he named Hel, was born, their happy moment is cut short by Thor, who shows up to banish the child to the underworld. He takes Loki's other son, the wolf Fenrir, and smashes his siren daughter Jangr against a rock before tossing her into the water below. This is all punishment for Loki, who slept with giants against Odin's wishes. This sibling rivalry runs very deep. Be back to the present. King Leif is being thrown by Tuas inside Honir's head to suffer, and Loki is with Honir was an instrument Odin used in the first war between the Vair and the Aesir gods. He was exchanged with Freya as a gift, but Odin cleaved his head in two and left him mad inside his head. Leif began to see incidents of his past violent life. To rescue her husband from Honir's head, Sigret and her gang go to fight the Vair gods. After a long fight, Ello arrives in the nick of time with the frost giants whom he has compelled to Sigret's side. By telling them her story, Sigret is able to behead Honir from the outside, freeing Leif and Loki. Tuas is still angry, but Loki shows up to take the blame by revealing he was the one who poisoned the fruit of immortality, not them, and adds it was an order he took from Odin. After Loki left, his plan turned out for good, as this act is able to convince the Vair gods into going to another war against Odin and his tribe. They join Sigret and her gang and form an alliance with each other by pouring their spits on the floor. Sigret and Leif lead an army of frost giants and the Vair gods to Asgard, where they immediately appear in front of the Aesir gods for battle. Tuas declares war against them as he believes it was the Asgardians who poisoned the apples that killed some of the tribe members. Balder tries to convince Tuas that it was all Loki doing alone, but since Thor was caught red-handed trespassing on Vanaheim's border, that was justifying enough to end their truce. At nightfall, when everyone was asleep, Sigd, Hervair, and Anvur sneak away from the camp, leaving Leif and Egil behind for their own protection. Their plan is to sneak into Asgard to kill Thor in his sleep. Thanks to Freya, they were able to enter the walls of Asgard, but unfortunately, Thor was expecting them and captures them. Just as Thor tries to strike Sigret with his hammer, Loki shows up. As Loki engages in a fight with Thor, Leif and the others use the opportunity to rescue Sigret, Hervair, and Anvur. There is something I didn't mention. Anvur hates Loki because he killed his family. Anvur couldn't help but attempt revenge on the trickster god and ends up having his head crushed as a result. Just to let you know, you might think Loki is a good guy, but he's not. His sole mission is to prevent Ragnarok, to avert the deaths of his children Fenrir and Jormungand, and he isn't picky about how he goes about doing that. Leif is so sad about Anvur's death and tries to convince Sig to return to the fields and live happily with him, because the only thing that awaits him for fighting with the gods is death. But Sigret tells him that she is not interested in marrying him anymore, which leaves him shocked. Revenge is her only goal now, even if death claims her as a result. To make the point clear, Sigret impales Leif's leg with her spear to force him to stay behind. The final battle we have all been waiting for begins. Tuas and Sig lead the Vair gods and the giants in a war against Asgard. During the battle, Thor and Tuas clash, but Thor eventually slays him. The battlefield falls silent and shocked as Thor ended the life of the leader of the Vair gods. With his leg injured, Leif still shows up and Sigrid's army gets outnumbered as thousands of soldiers from Valhalla show up to fight for Thor. On the other hand, Sidona meets with Odin in his palace to make a deal with him. Odin is so obsessed with knowing his future and how he is going to die, and this obsession has driven him mad. Sidona uses her powers to show him the future, and he realizes that the battle happening today is going to change the world. There will be a new civilization and people will stop worshipping him and move on to other gods. Odin sees Jesus Christ and sees a modernity dominated by Christianity. This is the most horrifying fate he could imagine, and out of anger, he instantly kills Sidona. Shred is happy to see Leif, who still decided to return and fight with her. After all this happened, together with her gang and with Loki, they all fight Thor at once. This was a very epic battle, and with amazing teamwork, they really gave Thor a tough time. But Thor gets so angry and summons his thunder, sending them flinging in the air. Just as Thor tries to kill Sigret, Hervair sacrificed herself to save Sigret. Hervair has two sons who died in battle and are in Valhalla, and she has been wishing for this moment to come, so she will go to Valhalla and reunite with her sons after her death. The Valkyries refuse to take her to Valhalla. Sigd begs them to take her, but none of them listen. Eventually, hands break through the ground to drag Hervair to the underworld. And Hel herself appears. Hel explains that Valhalla is not some promised reward but essentially a recruitment drive for Odin's private army in the underworld. Hervair will be spared this fate and she will finally be free from the gods. According to God Balder, Thor offers Sig the chance to surrender. The fighting can end and no more blood needs to be shed, but Sig turns down the offer. Sig wanted to kill Thor for revenge, but now she reveals she wants more. She wants the world to be free from the gods by killing all of their kind. After giving a motivational speech to her army, she charges at Thor in tears. Thor tries to finish off Lee, and during this moment Shred throws her spear towards Thor. But the spear impales Balder, not Thor. Freya arrives and transports a crying Thor to Valhalla, denying Sig her vengeance. When she turns to Loki, he stabs her, believing that killing her on the battlefield will send her to Valhalla where she can continue her vengeance on Thor. And that was how the show ended. Thank you for watching, guys. If you love animation movies, please subscribe to this channel and keep watching. Thanks.